Hey Instagram, hey Facebook, hey YouTube. I'm reading Spare the Kids. Why Whooping Black Children Won't Save Black America by Stacey Patton. Without condescension or unnecessary moralizing, this book will challenge your most deeply held assumptions and refute your strongest arguments. Mark Lamont Hill. So I'm about to get into some hot tea. Yes. And it's going to be a good time. A lot of people have been telling me to start a book club. I'm already a part of a couple. And I also want to start a podcast. I want to have a roundtable discussion. So if you are willing to sit for a roundtable, virtually, of course, come get at me. Golly, all this gray. Come get at me, and I would love to see how soon I can get 5 people together virtually just to talk about the things I normally talk about and post about anyway. Also, book club, right? A lot of people told me to start a book club. Well, this is the book I'm starting right here, right now. And so, let's do it. A family conversation. This book isn't just about hitting children. It's about black children and freedom. It is also a book about Black America and our pain. It is an examination of history, racism, trauma, crime and policing, media, child welfare policy, science and medicine, popular culture, religion, humor, schooling, sexuality, and who gets to be a child in America. Whew, I just remembered I didn't even flash the image for y'all. So for Facebook and YouTube, here's the book. There's the book right there. There it is, over there. Spare the Kids. That's what it looks like. The Amazon link's in the description. I'm not getting paid for it though, so, whatever. At a historical moment when young people around this country are declaring to the world that Black lives matter, that Black girls rock, and that they are magical, it is clear that the tides have changed. Our children want to breathe. Their hands are up, don't shoot. They don't want to be stopped. They don't want to be frisked. They don't want to be told to police their bodies in public spaces or to hold their tongues. They don't want to be forced to lie down on filthy sidewalks and submit to the injustice of the moment. They don't want to be the next Freddie Gray or Sandra Bland, portrayed as a thug in the news or turned into yet another heartbreaking hashtag on social media. They are not alone. Their parents and loved ones don't want them to experience such injustices either. They want their children to have opportunities to grow up, to become healthy, thriving adults. This has been the cry of generations of Black parents since slavery. These fears and the elusiveness of these simple hopes have been central to the struggle of Black lives for all that time. But over the past few years, we've been caught in an endless cycle of grieving. The killings of unarmed Black people by cops, and the senseless street murders of our young people by other Blacks in cities across the country have elevated parents' fears and left them wondering how to protect their children. The body count has also intensified debates over physical punishment. We live in a country where pregnant Black women still have to ask the same ethical questions that the civil rights activist W.E.B. Du Bois posed a little more than a century ago. Is it worthwhile? Ought children be born to us? Have we any right to make human souls face what we face today? These days, even white parents have written about the fears they have for the Black children they are raising. They share the fears that they have for the Black children. They share Black parents' frustrations over their inability to protect their adopted and biological children from the racial harms outside their homes. The cold, hard truth is that we live in a country where Black children don't get to be children. They face a culture that questions their intellectual abilities and slanders their humanity at every turn, and a criminal justice system that subjects them to adult penalties, even for first-time offenses. Black 4- and 5-year-olds are 18% of the country's preschoolers, but make up nearly half of out-of-school suspensions for toilet mishaps, crying, and throwing tantrums. By age 10, Black children are considered less innocent than white young children and are perceived to be older than they actually are, especially by police officers. And the darker their complexion, the more likely they are to receive harsh punishment, including paddling with wooden boards from school teachers and administrators, and longer sentences from the courts. Whew, okay. All right. We live in a society where black children who end up in the emergency room are less likely to receive pain medications because white people would not believe black people experience physical pain in the same way. Where a teenage boy can't walk to the store to buy iced tea and candy without being stalked and shot by a neighborhood watchman. Where a black girl can be yanked out of her seat by her neck and tossed across a classroom by a school resource officer. We live in a society where a 12-year-old boy playing in the park gets mistaken as a 20-year-old man and is shot dead by the police within 2 seconds. Where a teenage boy can't hang out with his friends playing rap music in a car without being killed by a white man irritated by the loud beats. Where a black teen's dead body can lie in the street baking in the sun for 4 hours in front of his parents and a traumatized community. Where the legal system insists time and time again that black children are responsible for their own deaths. Where adults debate whether unarmed children deserve to die because of their size, because they stole something, because they got suspended from school or smoked marijuana in the past. We live in a country where the suicide rates among elementary-age black children has nearly doubled since the 1990s. While suicide rates among white children have fallen, according to a 2015 report from the Journal of American Medical Association. Researchers pinpoint exposure to violence and traumatic stress, as well as aggressive school discipline and a higher likelihood of early onset puberty as possible risk factors. This trend should not be surprising given this country's treatment of black people. On top of our own pain, our children are receptive to what their parents and elders are feeling, displaying, discussing, and experiencing. There are so many traps for our young. Drugs, mass incarceration, neighborhood and gang violence, racist teachers, the school-to-prison pipeline, sex traffickers, trigger-happy cops, a predatory foster care system, the George Zimmermans and Darren Wilsons of the world, poison, tap water, and the list goes on. There is a lot to be afraid of. Given these ugly realities, it's not a surprise that black parents are telling their children whatever they need to in order to keep them safe. Work twice as hard. Be 3 times as good. Pull up your pants. Take off that hoodie. Cut those dreadlocks. Act right around white folks. Don't make sudden movements. Keep your hands out of your pockets. Don't mouth off at the cops. And don't run away from them even if you're afraid. Black parents have always searched for armor to protect their children from people who instinctively see them as threats. Another way black parents try to protect and love their children is by physically punishing them. Whether we call it whooping, beating, spanking, or loving discipline, for many, not to hit is considered neglectful and irresponsible black parenting. Our religious leaders preach this. Neighbors enforce it. Comedians and radio personalities joke about it. Political leaders claim it will save our communities, lead to peace in our streets, and keep young black bodies out of jail and the morgue. Millions of people give a virtual thumbs up on social media when they see viral videos of parents physically punishing or shaming their kids. And far too many of us will even argue that whooping kids is a black thing, as if it's behavior we are genetically predisposed to and can't change. But corporal punishment is not a black thing. Between 70 and 80% of all Americans hit their children. National surveys have varied over the years. Still, this book is solely focused on corporal punishment within the black community. It is an effort to understand how whooping children became so deeply embedded in our culture as good parenting. I ask, why do so many black people have faith that whoopings will keep our children safe? Why do we consider our physical and emotional pain and the scars left behind to be signs of strength, even though our security and health in this country remain precarious? Why do so many of us believe that our personal achievements or the fact that we haven't been jailed or killed should be attributed to painful whoopings? Although we have been making these arguments for generations, black children should not have to feel the burning sting of centuries-old whip to learn or to be kept safe. My big assertion is this. The violence our children face from the police systems, the school systems, the streets, and from their parents is all interconnected. It is what one of my Facebook friends called strange and bitter fruit from the same tree. The belief that we need to whoop our kids to keep them in line is deeply grounded in our collective psyche, in much of the same way that racists believe black folks are culturally deficient and police officers disproportionately see us reaching for guns when we're actually reaching for IDs. I've heard too many black mothers say, for example, if I don't whoop my son's behind now, he will knock me down later. These mothers are usually talking about toddlers or young adolescent boys. Their words demonstrate how racist ideas about the potential criminality of violence of black males seeps into black parents' thinking about their own children. This book is going to challenge some of our long-held beliefs about physically punishing children. It makes a private conversation public. I realize that I am committing a cultural taboo by airing our dirty laundry. I am also fully aware that black parents, especially black mothers, are already publicly, routinely criticized and blamed for our poverty, crime, and countless other issues. I'm not trying to add on to the chorus of stereotyping hate that sees black parenting as the source of society's problems. But the defecation... D-E-I-F-I-C-A-T-I-O-N. Is that defecation? Defacing? But the defacing of black mothers is just as damaging as white racist stereotypes against them. Thanks in part to the late rap artist Tupac Shakur, the black mother is the only woman in our community who can be a crackhead and a black queen at the same time. We put mama on a pedestal and hesitate to call her out because she's holding up our families, often by herself. But that doesn't make it okay for her to beat the black off us. That kind of celebration excuses accountability for parenting practices that are damaging to the overall well-being of black children. We have to talk about this. This book may also bring up some old wounds. It gets to the very foundation of what many of us have been taught by family, church, and society. But when it comes to discussions about hurting children's bodies, my number one concern is not hurting children's bodies. The only empathy I have for the adults who hit children comes from the fact that many of them are doing the only thing they know to do. After all, most American parents were hit as children, and there is no universal parenting program designed to educate parents about the harms of hitting or non-physical alternatives. It's unrealistic to expect that people whose brains have been wired to hit children and not see it as an act of violence will intuitively do the opposite. If you have children and hit them, you might feel discomforted by the fact that your actions are connected to the trauma of the whoopings you got as a child. It might piss you off to hear me say that you didn't turn out fine because of the whoopings, but that you either turned out fine in spite of the pain, or that you are a survivor of unrecognized trauma. It might tick you off to hear me say that there are lots of folks walking around who may have been abused and didn't even know it. My hope is that this book will be so disturbing that it will make it difficult for people to continue hitting children in peace. This is perfect for me! I have an idea where resistance will come from, though. Everybody is always up in black folks' business trying to tell us how to handle our lives, and we put up with this everywhere. But our homes belong to us. They may not be perfect, but they are ours. We're not going to have anybody coming into the only space we have and telling us what to do with the bodies of children we created, feed, clothe, pray for, and worry about all day, every day. It doesn't matter if it's our neighbors, teachers, medical, legal, or psychological experts, child protective services, the government, or even somebody like me, a young black woman who doesn't have any children at all. No matter what, we believe it's our right to teach and discipline our children the way we see fit. But there's little acknowledgement that the world is much more open today than at any other point in human history. We know a lot more now thanks to science. But instead of adapting our parenting approach to meet the challenges of our current world, there are still many of us who long for the good old days, when kids didn't act so bad and knew their place. We believe that the good old days were safer. The family union was intact. There was no war on drugs. The schools didn't need metal detectors. People could get a good paying job in a house with only a high school diploma. Men settled scores with their fists, not guns. With so much going on in the world, there are lots of reasons why kids seem different today. Is it really because we're not whipping them enough? Tough love is often cited as a reason for this more idyllic era. In the good old days, if you got out of line at home, you went to the backyard and picked your own switch. Lots of us had to do this. I had to do it myself. Switches, belts, extension cords, wire hangers, shoes, and basically any object within reach was fair game for my married, black, middle-class adoptive mother who whooped me. I wasn't always beaten this way, of course. Sometimes it was a mild pop on her hand. Pop with her hand. But it all hurt. It all made me cry. It all made me afraid of her, which was the point. To hear my elders tell it. They said if my adoptive mother didn't nip my behavior in the bud, bad things were doomed to happen. I'd try to rule over her, flunk out of school, become a teen mom, do jail time, or end up in an early grave. This is the situation we all recognize. But it was not unusual for my adoptive mother to take things much further. I still have the physical scars from all those whippings. and I spent the bulk of my childhood in New Jersey's foster care children until I aged out at age 18. It is my experience with the physical, verbal, and emotional abuse in my adoptive parents' home that sparked my interest in the historical treatment of black children during and after slavery. I had a suspicion that my whoopings, though meted out solely by my adoptive mother, had something to do with history. She whooped me like her parents whooped her, and like their grandparents whooped her parents, and like her great-great-grandparents whooped her grandparents, and like Massa whooped her great-great-grandparents. When I was a doctoral student in African American Studies at Rutgers University, I learned that the larger cultural devaluation of black adults and children informs the way black parents discipline their children. The lingering effects of the trauma of centuries of slavery and post-emancipation racism has produced what acclaimed author Joy DeGruy has described as multi-generational, maladaptive behaviors that continue to be passed on from black parents. These parents suffer from chronic stress and from what's known as post-traumatic slave syndrome, which we inherited from our enslaved ancestors. DeGruwy's theory is similar to the results of research by doctors in New York's Mount Sinai Hospital, who discovered that the Jewish descendants of Holocaust survivors had undergone changes in their genes as a result of their parents' trauma. All right, I'm halfway through chapter 1, and it's hot. Let's see what's good, y'all. Peace.